Patrick, many thanks, and I now know what it's like to be a second-class citizen on United when you fly into a Delta hub. Oh boy. So thank you. That was a long title, and I probably should apologize for all of the long titles. I feel like in my job role, there's an additional thing. I chair the university's ethics board. So I feel like I'm a Cirque du Soleil actor, where I just will fall over flat one day. It's pretty challenging, and so the really cool thing about this week is that I don't normally get to talk about my research or my academic interests because I'm an interim department head, and for those of you in administration know that it's a whole different game. And so when I got a conversation with Patrick to come over here and chat, it was really cool to be invited, so thank you first of all for doing that. And I'll give you some kind of context as we talk today about what I believe in terms of the opportunities in distance and hybrid in terms of curricular transformation. And then yesterday I was with DHS for 2 days talking about my research. So it's very rarely that I get to do two things in the same week that I totally enjoy as I progress into maybe a different career path in administration. So thank you for enabling me to do this, and thank you for listening to me. What I'm going to do, first of all, is kind of center my topic about a couple of things, where I stand and how I got to where I stand. And then some of the distance education opportunities, some experiences that I've had from customized pathways through a course, some of the transformation we've been doing ourselves at Purdue, challenges from a faculty perspective, and then also as a department head, I think hopefully some insights about some of the challenges that I had as a faculty member teaching online, and hopefully not being a hypocrite as an interim department head about thwarting those ideas that I had about distance education. And it'll become clear in a minute maybe about some of my philosophies. And then how to effectively manage online courses, and to understand a little bit more about how we can engage faculty in doing really good online material, so it's not a second-class citizen to face-to-face or vice versa. There's a lot to talk about, so hopefully I'll get it done between now and 11:15, and I'm happy to engage you with questions or comments as we go through. So I've been doing this for about 20 years, and what I wanted to do is kind of just discuss with you again. We'll start off is kind of those struggles that I've had about meeting an online and residential on-campus students. My department it's not a very big department in our college. We've got about 4,500 students in our college. My unit is about 150 undergrads and about 300 graduate students, give or take. The majority of grad students are online. And I serve around 8,500 potential seats every year on courses that I cover. Typically, we're in leadership and innovation. As the panel highlighted, we believe that that's one of the areas that won't be as much as impacted by some of the traditional deltas in the landscape with AI and everything. And so, as the panel said, how do you teach effectively leadership and organizational leadership to a group of people that tend to spend most of their time with their noses in their phones? And so this is kind of a challenge, and I think something that we have to do a little bit maybe more efficiently and effectively from maybe a department head perspective. I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a personal history just to give you some kind of context, and as Patrick mentioned, I was an undergrad at Iowa State. Now, I'm not the best student. It's kind of, if my advisor was sitting in this audience, I don't know kind of what she would be thinking right now in my career path. It's kind of interesting. I was not the best student. I wanted to do logistics, hence my master's degree. There's the connection. And I could never get into pre-business. I was in pre-business. I could never get into business. And if you see my transcript, it'll show you that I changed my degree because as an undergraduate and from England, I decided to study abroad and have an excellent time. And excellent time doesn't necessarily equate with grade point averages. And reflecting back on it, I don't think I changed a thing, but it was a struggle. I'd equate it to the fact that in England at the time you had to do essays and long answers, and at Iowa State it was short answers and multiple choice, and that didn't really fly with the parents, but I was the first kid through college, so I figured I would give it a bit of a stretch. And so these competing challenges are no different to the students that come into my office every day. They're residential students, they come from a wide range of backgrounds. And sometimes they take online classes because of a block in the Purdue system. So they might go to a community college to take calc because they fear calc is too difficult. Many times it's harder in a community college. They don't get that. It's kind of interesting. We have Ivy Tech in town, and yeah, they will sometimes wander across to take Ivy Tech calc, and it's really good calc. You sit there and go, what's going through their heads as they try and pathway the easiest path through, which is never traditionally the easiest path through. And so I did the same thing. At Iowa State there's DMAC, Des Moines Area Community College. I went down and took an online class, a physical class, but it was spun around the system on the TV, which was kind of interesting. And then I thought, well, you know what, I'll do an online class. I've heard this class at Iowa State. It's going to, you know, kind of kick me into touch, and I'm a bit stubborn, so I'll do it online. Oh, and so this arrived. I'm glad everyone knows what that is, because not that I disputed that we wouldn't know what it was, but I didn't want to have that explanation. It came in a ruggedized box. And so if I'm thinking about my logic, and I still see this today, I'm taking an online class because I want to substitute it because I think it's easier. And so wanting to learn, I opened the box, got that, threw it in the TV. It ate it the first time round because it had been used a couple of times. And then I did what every other student, in that class that I was watching, the camera was right at the back there. The acetate was here. The camera was kind of loosely focused on me, the talking head, and the screen. Not doing a good job of either. And like dominoes, the heads fell. And so did mine. And so the next 2 days later, this came. And I was like, my God. This is intense. This is just like being in a regular class with the same kind of boredom that I'm struck on. And I don't think I'm going to open the next box. My roommate was pretty PO'd when this happened. I'm joking, this was courtesy of Google Images, but you get the point. I was a lousy student in residential life. I am not magically going to disappear and change my spots and go on to be a wickedly wonderful student in an online or hybrid environment. I think many times students always default to the easiest path, and that easy path is that. A ton of videos just stacked up there. I returned them all in one box. I passed the class because I read the book, and by luck passed. But I didn't watch any of those videos after that first experience. And I sit back and think, well, 20 years later, are we any better than what that is? And many times it's yes, and many times it's no. It's just replace this with a talking head over PowerPoints at the easiest level, or some kind of interaction. And so I don't think I learned much out of that. I learned that it was expensive to push them all back because the cases were expensive, and then if I didn't do it, there was a dumpster in the dorms. I was really inclinating just to throw them in there. But there was some small print that I realized that needed to be returned. So courtesy of USPS, my roommate was very happy to get rid of these things. I did that. And so sometimes I think when I'm looking at students and chatting with students today, the default out is take an online class. And I don't think that should be the case. So I got my degree, I left, I went back to England, I couldn't get a job. So what do I do? Well, I could go ahead and get a master's degree like the default, right? No, I can't do that because I don't have the grades to get in. I thought, well, wait a minute, this needs to be a better strategy here. So I got a job. I worked for British Telecom as an operator. It wasn't the thrillingest job. And I sat there and I was with my parents. They were kind of a little bit frustrated that their kid had arrived back with maybe not a lot of career potential. And I thought, well, you know, this isn't really me. I'm fairly well driven. I did have a blast at Iowa State. I learned a lot. I got a degree in political science, which ironically, having just come from Washington, D.C. and dealing with DHS for the last 2 days, giving presentations about the border and everything, that degree in political science helped me more than anything else. So when people poo-poo liberal arts, I'm not having any of that, all right? Because it really does give me a solid foundation of life in general. And so I decided to go ahead and think, well, I should really do my master's and clear my slate here. And there's this, the Open University. And I thought, well, I'll do that. Now, here's rinse and repeat here. As I think about this in my head, this is no different to what I just did with the videotapes, except it's broadcast. But it's broadcast at this o'clock in the morning. That's from 1996, when I graduated. That's what was available on the TV. There were 4 channels back then, BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and Channel 4. And BBC Two had Open University. And none of that really kind of, you know, did it for me. At 6 a.m., nothing would do it for me. My colleagues may argue that today, 6 a.m. still doesn't work for me. But I can see kind of the attraction. You can videotape it. I know DVRs back then. And then I just get like mounds of VHS tapes that my parents won't like. And I said, well, you know, this isn't good. So I went ahead and I looked at a master's degree. And I decided to commute an hour and a half into London because I wanted that experience of a kind of a community of people. We were all kind of working professionals, working age, professional age. I got a job out of this degree. I still keep in contact with 12 or 13 people that were in my degree. It's a very small cohort-based degree. And today, all of us are incredible. I think most of us are fairly incredibly successful in our jobs. When I look at LinkedIn, it's kind of cool just to see where everyone are. And I don't think I might have been able to do that online because I didn't have the maturity. And I think that's one of the keys that we have to explain to students. The students that I see is, I don't think you're necessarily mature enough. This is not an easy path. And I keep repeating that. Then I met a faculty member at Purdue. We were talking about online delivery. I worked in a warehouse after my master's degree. I ran a warehouse for a company now called DHL, the transport side of it, so a bunch of trucks. And we were looking at home delivery, how to sign on a digitizer pad. This was 1997, 6, 7 maybe. And you know those digitizers from UPS, those bricks weren't necessarily the best thing. Met up with a professor at Purdue at a conference in Chicago. He sowed the seed, the rest is history. That's how I got the weird convoluted thing. And every time in my head, online comes into it. And so over the last 28 years, I guess, including the academic side, I kind of always struggled with this thing. Then I started at Purdue. I started in 2001 as a faculty member in my field, biometrics. Obviously, I started in August. September rolls around. That changes not only my career path and trajectory, but also my research area. And people wanted to learn a little bit more about biometrics. And these were the people that were out in industry that hadn't heard about it before. And you sit there and go, okay, well, maybe we can do some distance ed here. It's kind of like the constituents. They don't want to come back to college. They maybe want to learn a little bit about, in my case, biometrics. And we also at Purdue have a statewide system where some of the classes are taught locally, but also broadcast around the state. And so I thought, well, I know what I don't like as a student. Maybe I'll try and help out. And so one of those things that I did was work with my faculty advisor as a TA and then as a faculty member right around 2001 to figure out how to make this happen. Now the class that I taught was a lab class. And so content's one thing, interacting with machines is another thing. And how do I get the same experience? Because you want to be equitable across the sites, and most of them were at sites, but also online too, where the experience of a main campus with all the resources that it has there can be replicated at the statewide or online sites. So what we thought was, how naive we were, but never mind, let's just get a stack of computers and have them remote in. Then they can kind of experience the same programming and do that. How do you remote in? The first sign you realize when no one pays attention to instructions is when they call you saying, I just rebooted my machine 3 times. You don't do Control-Alt-Delete to get a remote access. You do Control-Alt and N, surely. But they don't read the instructions. They panic, like there's a default setting of, it says Control-Alt-Delete, so I'll reboot my own machine. Because they don't get that when you do Control-Alt and Delete, you restart it. That's incredibly frustrating for students because they're like, it doesn't work. And then they spin into some kind of like, I don't know, 9th level of hell, which I witnessed at Dulles yesterday, all the way through the night. I was well with them then. But you sit there and go, well, people don't, how many of your students that are online don't kind of listen and pay attention and do instructions on basic? I noticed someone at the back there said, we have an intro class, which I think is a great thing. We tend not to at Purdue to do that. We never did. We kind of have a set of instructions which they skip over. It's like buying the calculator with like the 1,000-page manual and then tossing it and then struggling. So this concept of Control-Alt-N surely was lost. And what we were trying to do was to have students get the same kind of computing experience and power that they could, but on the main campus remotely, and that was a real challenge. We found that support was hard. And okay, as a TA and as an instructor that is like 1 year out, I remember how that works. And no disrespect to my advisor, he didn't, right? And so I get that I have the same feeling, right, as sometimes my grad students. And when I walk in the lab and want to have like a fit of research in me, every so often I get the bug, they look at me like, oh no, you're not going anywhere near this stuff because you don't know how to do it anymore. We'll guide you and you can chat to us, but you're not touching it. And then I'll sneak in, and then at the weekend I'll sneak in. Or I'll remote in even because they still know how to do it. And then I'll break something, and then they'll spin out of control on Monday. Like, what'd you do? I'm like, I kind of went in there, I'm sorry. But I just had the urge. I'm so far behind. And so you get that. You got faculty maybe have and this is no disrespect on faculty, we're busy. But they may not be technical experts. I wouldn't know. I do tech support for my dad. Now it's like, take my dad to the computer store. It's all yours. I'm out of here. Because I don't know what he's done. I don't know what he's loaded on there. I have no clue what to do. I try, but I don't have any patience anymore. And he doesn't have any patience. We don't fall far from the same tree. And you sit there and go, this is too beyond me. We talk about Chromebooks. I wouldn't know a Chromebook from a hole in the wall, right? I do information technology. I'm in technology. I have an Android, but I wouldn't know how to support a Chromebook. I'd be lying if I told you I did. And therefore, I'd be lying if the majority of my faculty knew how to support a Chromebook unless they had kids at home. Some do, some don't. I don't know how to support a Mac. As you'll attest, I don't even know how to support a PC. So this is kind of the challenge that we have. It's really hard, especially when you have bring your own device. All right, so we might mandate a particular set of devices, but they'll go out and buy one minus the mandated instructions, and then wonder why it didn't work. Back in 2001, it always cracked me up when someone said, do I really need the internet? Yes, you do. It's an online class. But we never told them what kind of internet we wanted. Like dial-up today doesn't work. My parents have like copper last mile in England because they don't do a lot on it. And we don't have fiber, we don't have cable to the house. Yeah, it's England. They can't get cable, they can't get Brexit. And that's the only thing we're going to say about it. But you sit there and you think, well, how do you support someone that can't come to the table with the basic necessities? But I live on a campus, and I live near campus, where I have really good internet. Sometimes it fails, and it goes down a little bit, or it gets clogged because they do Netflix and all the other stuff. We've started to stop that on campus. But it's very different to the middle of Indiana, or the middle of somewhere else. Where you may not get that thing. And so when you look at it, there was never a prerequisite to have good internet connection. There was just an assumption because you take an online class that you should. And therefore, learning all of this over the last 20 some odd years, there's been a love-hate, many times hate, relationship with online. I'm not sure I'm the right person to come here to speak today. But it's because we have because we translate so many of the institutional challenges onto online. For example, we're going to teach a whole set of online classes over the summer. They're 4-week modules. We do this, we have 3 modules over the summer at Purdue, and you can do 4 weeks as an instructor, 8 weeks or 12 weeks, in kind of you pick your poison. But if you can't get your internet done, and you can't get the right computer, and you can't get online, and you're on a 4-week class, and you've waited a week, right? Yeah, you know, and you sit there, but they don't, and because we don't compress classes like that except in Maymester. They get that experience once a year. And conversely, faculty only get that experience at Purdue in Maymester. And so, you know, it's a great idea. We can, you know, we get salary over the summer, and it seems a good idea at the time, and then wallop, right? And that's a very different kind of kick than trying to do that in a face-to-face. Hard enough to do a Maymester face-to-face because you're in class for like 3.5, 4 hours a day. But to translate all of that material online and to expect them to do the same amount of contact hours is incredibly difficult. So one of the challenges that I think faculty have is this whiplash of complaints at the beginning of the semester that really sometimes turns them off, because it's not pedagogical complaints. It's complaints about the technology, or I don't know what I'm doing, or can't see the discussion boards. And it's because we use Blackboard. How many people use Blackboard in here? Okay. Well, maybe afterwards I'll buy you a beer or something. It's not necessarily great for doing this kind of thing sometimes. We're reviewing it at the university on what LMS to use. I don't know what one we're going to go for. We may go for Blackboard, who knows. But every faculty member sets up Blackboard slightly differently, it seems. We don't have a common template. And the expectations vary differently across. And so as an administrator, not a faculty, that's where my first kind of friction point is with students. 4 weeks in, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a week in. I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't heard anything. I should be on Blackboard. Yes. And so again, they might be doing summer classes because they're playing catch up. Again, it's the same thing that I had as a student. I was trying to default to the easy setting, which it isn't, but I don't know that. And I bring my lousy behaviors in class online, and I don't do well. And it's a bad experience for faculty too, when you're like, well, are they showing up? Well, yeah, we get the roster list. And so this is something that I think is really difficult. So first of all, I commend everybody that is doing online, because it is extremely difficult. I don't think as a faculty member I realized how difficult it is. I reckon that if I have 20 students, I have 1 section of 20 when I'm doing it face-to-face. I have 20 sections of 1 when I'm doing it online. And I don't think any administrators figured out the loading of that. Right? And so as department head, I'm really cognizant. For the last 20 years I've been complaining to myself, no one else will listen, and then figuring out that, oh, I have faculty that I think the model works pretty well. I've got 100 students in this class over the summer. That's great. And then a faculty member will come to me like, are you out of your mind? That's like 100 sections of 1. And I'm like, oh, okay, I forgot how hard it was. I haven't done it for a while, sorry. So, and so we sometimes use as distance as a disruptor to the traditional classroom structure. But it's really difficult because that really hasn't changed. This is Windows 95. But that whole experience hasn't really changed, in my opinion, in the online environment from the perspective of support from faculty. So what I'm trying to do as a department head is to basically go ahead and support them with a team of students that can help with the software. Like, they live Blackboard, they can figure it out. And so we're going to use, some kind of tools, WebEx or whatever it is, to help faculty divert all of the non-pedagogical questions out the way, so that they can be empowered to concentrate on teaching the content, and someone else can be empowered by teaching them the support stuff. It'll reduce the friction, hopefully, because I honestly think that that's one of the reasons why it tends not to work as well as we all passionately want it to work, is because we sometimes act as tech support, and that's not our strength. The other thing is the variation of students. One of the challenges that I see as an administrator is I get students that might take a 100 level class as a senior. because they got out of sequence somewhere along the line, or they didn't want to do it, and then they have to. And so their attitude is, I'm out of here. I don't really want to play games. I don't want to participate. I don't care about gamification. I'm done. Give me my credit, my grade, and off I go. Well, in some ways I don't blame them, right? It's really hard to shoot an arrow across that. I taught a class for a company. That's equally difficult because everyone that was like, the average age was 40 some odd years old in that class. It was a master's degree required. And therefore they have 20 years of prior experience. And I'm teaching design of experiments. And I have people that are, Six Sigma black belts. They're like, I don't want to do this. And then I have people like, what? T-test? You gotta be kidding me. And that's really hard to shoot an arrow through that population. It's almost impossible to do. And so, you start to think about, is there a better way? And so about 6 years ago, we started to go through this challenge, and I simply just started to ask my colleagues, do you like it or not? Do you want to do online or not? And some people just like, no. Some people are like, yes. But there has to be a better way. It's like chalk and cheese with us. There's no like, if this was a British thing, I would say it's like Marmite. You love it or you hate it. It's really quite difficult. And so 6 years ago, our college started going through a transformation with a new dean. And it was really kind of empowering because he was talking about the exact same challenges that the panel just beforehand was talking about. Students are different. We've been teaching 3 credit hours forever. The Carnegie model could be argued somewhat, maybe out of date. I'm not going to take his slide deck from him, but he has a really nice set of thoughts, and he's talked to many people about, is there a better way? And so I took that on board, and they said, well, maybe there is a better way. If you take a look at all of the critiques that faculty have, and you may take some of the critiques that students have these days, their attention span might be a little bit shorter, but I would argue that mine was just as short. But the reason that I didn't do well in undergrad was I wasn't interested in the content that was delivered to me. It was either delivered by a professor that didn't really want to be in front of me. It was delivered by a TA that didn't really want to be working for the professor. And on the other hand, I had a great time with lots of my professors, right? So it's really a vast continuum. And so when I looked at my classes that I taught and underlined this with the mission of the college, I started to think about there must be a better way to do online and try and help transform. Now, the new mission of the college, this mission's been good for about 6 years now, so it's new, it's kind of embedded in us, is to inspire, educate, and mentor students by learn by doing and integrated studies. You can read the rest. That's really hard to do online because how do you mentor people properly? How do you get that relationship going? And how do you maintain the experience of an in-classroom versus across classrooms? How do you get interdisciplinary learning? How do you get engagement? And that's quite difficult. And especially when my class used to look like this. 16 weeks, 16 technologies. Week 1, hello. Week 2, intro to biometrics. Week 3, let's do fingerprints. Week 4, let's do face. Week 5, let's do iris, ... And then we get down to barcodes and RFID. Because that's the way I, as an instructor, want to teach that. Bosh, 16 weeks. There's no textbook. This changes rapidly. It changes very rapidly. That's a cool thing about teaching it, and the bad thing about teaching it. Is that it always has to be updated, and we redo all the videos that we did when we had a great idea. But for a student, that's not maybe what applies to them. If I'm a supply chain student in my class, I couldn't care less about the first 8 weeks. You might use time and attendance for, hand geometry or something for time and attendance because it's a lot harder to bring someone else's hand. You can save a lot of money on using biometrics for time and attendance. So in a manufacturing environment, if you're trying to look at budget, your overtime and your lack of accountability with workers, that's right there. But that's not the meat and potatoes of a manufacturing auto ID class. The last 2 weeks are. Or the last 4 weeks. So I've got to get a student that's engaged all the way through, and it's difficult. So what we decided to do was say, okay, week 1, tell me what you're interested in and why. Supply chain over here, Homeland Security over there, not quite sure in the middle. Got an athlete or two in my class, okay, well, athletes use data all the time, right? Can't go anywhere. I got a Garmin watch that I don't do much with, but I have a Garmin watch that tells me I'm training for an Ironman, of all things. I'm stupid. It tells me I got 32 weeks and 1 day left, which, as Patrick will know, that equates to the same time frame as my PowerPoints, and they just arrived. So good job I'm doing this before. Thanksgiving's going to be rough in my household. But I can choose when I want to do things. And if I was saying, if I'm supply chain, I'm in the middle, or I want to do sports and I've got a coach that wants me to look at my own data or collect the data, or how many people have run a 5K? You run over a mat, it's RFID. The technology is not that hard. But I will be engaged if I apply it to what I'm interested in. And so what we've done is we said, okay, you tell me what you want to learn, and you can make your own pathway through that class. You can pick the modules you want to do, you can do it, and that's the hybrid side of it. And in class, we'll talk about the generic challenges of implementing insert technology. Because it doesn't matter whether it's fingerprint, face, iris. I was talking to, as Patrick said, yesterday I was with DHS, the day before, and we were talking about entry and exits and all this kind of stuff. Insert your biometric of choice, it doesn't matter, the problems are the same. Cameras are pointed in the wrong location, or if you go to a gas station, you'll see them up in the ceiling, but the integrators forget that it's sunny half the time. Hasn't quite made it to the Midwest yet. And so those are the same challenges as you go to an airport. Anyone fly through O'Hare? I don't know whether you do, but O'Hare Immigration Hall is really dark and dingy. That impacts the quality of face. You do face on your phone, these lights are going to be problematic. It doesn't matter what technology it is, barcodes have the same problems. In a manufacturer, you get dirty or whatever, you could replace them with RFID, but then you got metal, all of these kinds of things. And so we basically customized it to their interests. Now, this was a challenge in the plumbing of Blackboard, because basically we created like 120 different groups that they didn't realize, so they could choose. And from a university perspective, we had to make sure that they had the same amount of seat time, because we work on credit hours and hours and all of that stuff. So we had a pretty brutal algorithm, which is kind of fun to do. And so we wanted them to define their own path through. The engagement went up, the online contact hours went up. Right? We kind of spied on them on Blackboard, right? The amount of time that they were in. Did they do the same things? Yeah, were they late with their assignments? Sure they were. They kept on doing the same normal student things. But they actually, at the end, I think, got a lot more out of it. And we're still analyzing the data. But this was something that the plumbing was difficult to do. But it was actually fairly rewarding to see students grab your own content that you'd spent the last 20 some odd years developing and updating, and then actually run with it and apply it to what they're interested in. So in the regular class, we basically had 60 students, 60 sections of one student working their own way through. From an instructional perspective, that was actually quite liberating. And if you planned it correctly, it was, then you got the tech support with your TAs right, that spins out to online very easily. And then we did that online, and then the next thing, because we thought we'd get complicated, the next thing we did was we got a class down at Rolls-Royce that were DOE experts. That was my class down at Rolls-Royce, and a class up in West Lafayette, which was auto ID, but then we had them design an experiment, because we want them to data collect to understand that. But they're not design of experiment experts. They don't do that well. They haven't had the DOE class for a start. But I have a bunch of experts in Rolls-Royce and Indianapolis that know how to do DOE. I connected the two. Now, what's the main problem with teams these days is we're all over the place, right? Well, Indianapolis and West Lafayette are in the same time zone, but you know, working professionals have just as many life time constraints as an undergraduate believes they do. And so that was really challenging for them, because it was their kind of first experience with maybe working with someone that was a little bit more diverse in age than them. Some of the Rolls-Royce students want to knock it out, let's get going, hit done and get out, and the undergrads are like, no, not really today, it's been a hard night. Can we do it on the weekend? No, weekend's family time, we're not doing that. And so it's the same conversations you have in industry. Communication and clarity is the clear. It wobbled a lot. I'm not gonna, I'm glad I'm tenured, because if I wasn't, I would have like, oh, this is going a little south. But every time it bounced back. And I think grazing your knees is a good thing, right? Every so often you have to fall over to learn. It was a little touch and go. The success was, When I got 16 of the 25 students from Rolls-Royce to take PTO, I didn't make them do it. We had a poster session up in West Lafayette, and when I walked through the door, half the class essentially from Rolls-Royce were up there. They took PTO to come up. I thought that was a successful outcome if people were willing to drive 75 miles up and take a leave day to come and meet the undergrads that were teaching, that they collaborated with. Now it's difficult. That class is only offered once every other year, and so it's difficult. And so you start to think about what are the options here. From an administrator point of view, it's kind of difficult. There's lots of opportunities. You're going to get someone who wants to take it a different way. It's even more challenging when you do it over the summer, and this is what we're planning on doing this semester, this summer, is to integrate 5 or 6 core leadership classes taught by different instructors at different times, but to give students the ability to use their own experiences and works. If they're working in town, say at Subaru or something, we'll try and make them have automotive constructs all the way through each of the different degrees. It's quite difficult to do, but I think from faculty, they get to see a little bit rewarding. And so if we can customize within a class, we can surely customize out of classes. Sure, there are lots of problems that we probably all have. Majors, they're not always our majors. Some students might be taking one class and not a sequence. Some may take a sequence but out of sequence. Sometimes students work, sometimes they're not working. Sometimes they want to play, sometimes they don't want to play. And so we kind of have to scaffold some of these ideas and understand what's going on. And I think as well there's an opportunity to faculty to actually collaborate together. We don't often do that. We're very siloed. My class, very possessive about that. I'm not teaching my class this semester. And it's the best thing that happened to me. It's good to get out, walk around a little bit. Although I wasn't particularly happy about it. And I do the load. So what are we doing here? Well, we're going to help support the team. That's the number one thing that I've learned online. When I first designed my online class, it was what I wanted to have as a student, right? If that makes sense. I designed it based upon my own bad experiences. I might have included some other bad experiences. I might have created other bad experiences, law of unintended consequences. So we're going to get adjuncts. We have a team of adjuncts as well. We're trying to break down this adjunct faculty hierarchical stuff because I don't think it's valuable in the workplace. And so I get adjuncts and faculty to meet at the beginning of the summer to figure out some of the intersections of their activities. And we're getting students that are going to take these online classes to give us a survey ahead of time, and we're also going to meet them so that they can at least see each other before they disperse for the summer, because all of them are West Lafayette students. So you can kind of get that, you can at least kind of get some knowledge about those people ahead of time. We're going to identify what faculty do well and relieve the pain points of their struggles. They are not tech support. If you put them in that role, they'll likely fail. So how do we support them? How do we scale it? We talk about MOOCs and everything else like that, but scaling it's easy to add sections or add seats on an online class, but you don't scale the same experience. If you have a class of 10, that experience is much different than a class of 100. And it shouldn't be. You're paying the same amount. So how do we do that? And then what I'm working on now is an acknowledgement as an administrator of faculty load. Is it the same? My experience tells me it's not the same. And so understanding how to equitably distribute that through in the faculty load is something that I'm working on. And it's a work in progress. We'll probably have a little bit of bumps in the workplace here. But we seem to be working in, hopefully, well, I'll ask for questions in a minute, in the right way and right framework of what we're doing. So as my experience as a faculty member, I'm trying not to replicate them as a department head. I'm trying to get those faculty to understand my strategy, and that's kind of how we're doing it. So hopefully I think I answered all the questions. Any questions to you before we wrap up? Just nip over time here.
Yeah, any questions, please? I got a mic.
But I did like the previous person that said, but the time has run out and use it as you see fit. That was a great line.
So you got a question? Oh, come on, you guys aren't that shy. Please, somebody.
That's what you get for putting them before lunch.
That's true, that's true.
Be worse after lunch, right?
Well, I'll have a question then.
Okay.
Purdue's got it, Purdue Next, for example, with Capital. Can you give us the impact to you, or just organizationally, how that's kind of evolved? Because, I've read a lot about it, but I haven't talked to anybody that has really been in the midst of that kind of acquisition and how to try to leverage that new resource.
Tell my microphone's off. It's interesting. This is a personal opinion.
Yeah.
Hasn't affected me one bit. And it's interesting because when it was revealed, there was a lot of discussions with faculty and everything. But the underlying mission of Purdue is a land-grant institution. But we're just one block in West Lafayette, Indiana, that happens to serve a lot of people. And some argue, rightly or wrongly, so I'm not advocating a side here, that the larger you get and the more students you get from out of state, you start to destroy your land-grant mission. We have statewide campuses, we have regional campuses, kind of an interesting kind of, and then statewide kind of played the role of 2-year degrees, but then they got out of that and made 4-year degrees. We have a community college system, Ivy Tech. But there is a segment of the population that we don't serve, and I think the acquisition of Kaplan was an acknowledgement of that. It's interesting when I go to the airport that I'll see adverts for Purdue, Purdue Northwest, Purdue Online. I was in DC, I saw lots of adverts for Purdue Online. But we have Purdue Online and then Purdue Global, so I should say that we had Purdue Global. So the branding thing is kind of, I think, interesting. But for me as a unit, we're working with Purdue Online because in leadership we see in organizational leadership, one of the degree programs that I run, that is a continuum of lifelong learning. You just don't end up being a good leader when you come out of undergrad. And we all could probably identify good leaders that we work with, not so good leaders that we work with, good mentors or no mentors. And I think we have a unique path. In our Polytechnic, we've been discussing this a lot because the rest of the departments, computer information, computer graphics, aviation technology, MET, mechanical, electrical, building and construction management, those kinds of things. And where does technology leadership fit in that? If you look at the T shape on the T, it fits the top. It's a service, and some faculty are pretty awkward when it comes to like service thing because they do some kind of algorithmic numbers. I think there's plenty of opportunity for everyone. I think there's going to be a little bit of competition, and I think there's going to be a little bit of learning. There's a little bit of snobbery too. I don't think when it settles out, it'll be fine.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, hi.
I have a question back on how your two classes were set up. Did they, the Rolls Royce and the other one?
Yeah.
So were those just two separate classes? As I signed up for mine on this campus, I signed up for this one on this campus? Or was it more set up where it was just a common class everybody was signing up for? How did you merge those two?
No, so we're not really allowed, so it's interesting, right? It's difficult for us because they're fee-based and non-fee-based. So we're not allowed to have students in in the same container in Blackboard. So the only reason I did it was I was the instructor of record of both. And I wanted to get, the thing that has puzzled me, I don't know whether you guys feel the same way, is that when I went to college, there was a book written by someone that was equally maybe the instructor, that if I didn't understand the instructor, I'd open a book, not understand that, and the TA was his instructor, or her instructor. Nowadays, I can get the same information for $1.50 on YouTube, right? The elementary stuff, like beginning something. Yet, none of them have run with it. So the 400 levels are now 600 levels? No, they're still 400 levels. They haven't changed. The 100 levels are still 100 levels. Your point about high schools is interesting because Purdue's got a Polytechnic high school in Indianapolis. We're opening some more. But I think, Chromebooks, we're not. We're Office 365, yet everyone is, all the students are Chromebooks because we're not. We're different. So I think the challenge was logistics, but I felt that my students in West Lafayette who are just about to graduate to integrate with teams of more mature students had to have that experience, and I didn't want to teach them design of experiments because I had too much on my plate to teach them that and all the other stuff. So I thought, well, that's natural, get them down there to do it. And so they just briefed them online. So in my class, each group get a 5-minute presentation. Their assignment was not co-linked, it wasn't co-graded. And so they basically, their assignment was, you do that part of the poster, they'll do that part of the poster, they'll do this, you'll give feedback. But it was basically just like any other project, but we kept them separate. And then at the end, they interacted, but they didn't interact on Blackboard. They had to find their own way to do it.
So they weren't really interacting on Blackboard?
No, it's probably harder for them.
Yeah, because I know that, you have that stipulation because of the classes. So then, what technology do you use for them to talk to one another?
They just email or pick up the phone.
Just email?
Pick up the phone.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with sometimes these changes in technology. It's kind of interesting because I know, like, Microsoft is trying to get their own educational foot in there, and even if they do come to us knowing all the Google stuff, but the businesses don't use that. So helping them to transition from one technology to the other as part of this project was probably still pretty interesting, because everybody's got a different background.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges we have, even when I do projects, say, with partners, so say with a fingerprint project, I'll be working with a private company or maybe a government enterprise. They can't come onto my network. I can't get onto their network for bizarrely IT-related reasons, right? Right or wrong, that's how it's frustrating, and so we can't create guest accounts either. And so I just thought that the students had to kind of experience that little bit of pain. Like, Rolls-Royce won't let you jump on their networks, quite rightly so. Purdue, even though they're Purdue students, I couldn't commingle the classes. I figured it out the hard way, and it was a lot easier, to pick up the phone and have a chat with someone as opposed to like lob discussion. I have discussions in it might be Blackboard, but discussions are very ineffective because it's a lot easier to pick up the phone and have a face-to-face. Sometimes they would do WebEx because we have a neutral WebEx. They would just do that, and it's easy. But that's outside of the LMS. We have access to WebEx, so that's great.
Well, I agree sometimes, even when I'm talking to people, and I messaged my team and said, we could have handled this a lot more effectively if we could have just talked on the phone.
Yeah.
I have just a quick one.
Yep.
Traditionally, technology is seen as something that we use to augment what we do in the classroom, but it sounds like you have, in your course, you have taken technology and you have used it to flip the script, and it is driving the curriculum, because instead of covering all of those topics, the RFID, you're letting students choose out of that, and in a traditional face-to-face class, so all those things are covered. So was that a difficult shift for the faculty to go into a unit where they're only looking at 1 or 2 of those items as opposed to all of those?
So I went back. I've been teaching this class for donkey's years, right? So you sit there and go, do I want to do the same thing? Just change it up. And I change it up every semester that I'm teaching it, much to my grad students, like, don't know what again, we just got used to this. So I'll flip it around a little bit. And then, but we had this discussion about, in the transformation about, does it have to be that way? Does everyone have to lockstep? If there's a student who wants to do supply chain, can we do that? Now, the problem with a face-to-face class is, I got, how many in here, 50, 60? You'll all want to do all of that and apply it differently, because the nice thing about that class is you can use barcodes in retail, manufacturing, you pick your poison, you can use it everywhere. So I looked at the learning objectives. The learning objectives were there are three learning objectives. Nothing said that you had to do 16 technologies to meet the learning objective outcomes. I didn't change the learning objectives, I just taught it that way. And so what I thought about was, can I meet all the learning objectives within those technologies? The answer was yes. So then my problem then became seat time, because barcodes, you can wax lyrical about barcodes, and max write cards not so much, right? So If you do magstripe cards, you're going to have to build it up. So we created them an algorithm of a sheet of do this, and this is how long it would take, and these are the readings, and the whole 9 yards. But I had much better dialogue in class because I wasn't pounding through a technology a week. They have labs, they have online, so they learn the material online, and then I could talk about integration issues that I see as a researcher and practitioner out in the field that they would have to deal with if they went into a Ford or whatever. I mean, the majority of, in my opinion, and where most of our research is someone has put technology in and they put it in backwards. And then it hasn't met the requirements of the job because they haven't listened to client and everything else like that. So I thought, well, I'll spend a lot more time. If I can fix that problem, they can pick their technology and pathway through. The technology was the hardest thing to do, actually, because the learning management system is just not designed to do that. So we kind of really did it like a brute force attack. And you know, you sit there and go, oh, what happens if they change it again? We'll have to change it all again. But you know, in some cases it's rewarding. I think it was actually refreshing to say, am I teaching what the learning objectives tell me done, even though I've been teaching the same thing? And that's when we took a step back and go, I don't need to do 16 weeks of all of this. It was kind of refreshing.
Okay, we have time for one last question. Anybody else? Nobody else? Yes, please.
You said something that was really important, I think, communication. Communication is, I think, important not only online, but with faculty and adjuncts. So I've been an adjunct for 16, but this is only my 3rd year full-time. And the first thing I asked the adjuncts was, what do you really want to teach? Even if someone else is teaching it, what do you really want to teach? And they said, wow, no one's ever asked me that before. And I found out that 2 people out of the 15 or 20 were teaching opposite courses that they wanted to take. So I just switched them around, and now they're happy, you know, that they're teaching that. So the excitement of the content is there. And also, some of the old school professors that you don't think might want to jump on the technology are actually wanting to. So putting a question out there, does anybody want to be trained for online? I was surprised that a couple of people actually came forward and said, yes, I want that training at Macomb.
So we asked the same question this year. I basically went through all of my faculty, because it's my first year doing this, and said, okay, what do you want to teach? There's the plan of study, you know what that is. What do you want to teach out of the plan of study? How many do you want in the class? What's the reason you want them? Why are you capping it at 25? We have growing enrollment at Purdue, and we have a space challenge issue, and so it rubs me the wrong way if I'm in a class like this and there's 100 seats or 150, whatever, and the schedule only has let a 25 class in it, and conversely, why can't I open it up to 100? Now I get if there's a pedagogical reason why, I need to understand that, but it's awkward when the front row and half the class isn't here, right? You don't know whether it's you or they don't care or there's no one enrolled. So asking them that, then asking them when they want to teach, right? It was kind of interesting because I don't know everyone's schedules. I'm chair of the Institutional Review Board at Purdue, so I have meetings for 3 hours on Tuesdays every month, which buckets right up to my 12 o'clock class. So I have to then become like, I don't know, I can't do it, right? I just run to class because I know that's going to be a 3-hour meeting, but the schedule didn't think about that. So I asked those questions. And then adjuncts, adjuncts and faculty is a kind of different class level, and I don't believe in that. Everyone's here to do a good job. They're passionate about it. But if I ask the faculty whether they want to teach online, it's like, no. Why not? And it's because they don't want to play tech support all the time and have the hassle and then the group me that the students have that we don't have that spins out of control because they're ticked off. And so that's when I said, all right, well, a really good teacher, maybe not as technologically savvy as maybe someone else, but it'd be really cool to have her in the classroom. So what can I just do? That's when the discussion of tech support comes up. I'll do it right away. If I don't have to worry about like figuring out their internet and everything, because I have to call Comcast to figure out my own.
The other thing is, I noticed, I see them face to face, but if we have them go into that environment because they kind of have to in order to talk to you, then it's not like they're using it in a classroom, they're using it with you as a team. So creating kind of a group area in your LMS that all the faculty can kind of talk online. I'm sure some of you already have this, for sure, but some don't. And then they have to use it in that way. Like just recently, me using Zoom, you know, Tom and Sandy there, they introduced me to Zoom, and how I love it. You know, I think it might be a great place to communicate. But if they didn't say to me, meet me there, I might not have moved forward to use it in my classroom. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah, I do, totally.
instead of saying you have to use it in your classroom, or why don't you try this in your classroom, just using it yourself as a communication tool might help them to feel a little more comfortable with it to use it in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, we don't use our technologies effectively as we could. We just moved over to 365, so we're in like the movement phase. But I can't get access to SharePoint. I can't get access to Teams. The icons are there, but I can click on them and it says no. And so you get everyone starts to do the default setting of something else, right? And you've got this balkanization of technology. And so your point's really valid. I haven't thought about that to bung it in the LMS, but we can create sections of fake and call it something. That's not difficult to do. I got admin rights to do that in the LMS. So that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.